Hello, good day to you. Eric here. I want to get into a very interesting and what is often a quite personal subject matter, which is the realm of sort of professed economic belief. What's the model of economics you want to work? And I wanted to ask my thoughts about capitalism and communism and how they relate to political philosophy as well, between like anarchy and total despotism, totalitarianism. And a lot of my anarchist friends are anarcho-communists or anarchy-syndicalists, those sorts of things. And find myself as an anarchist as well politically, but in terms of economics, I consider myself a capitalist, someone who professes and respects property rights with the beings around him, as opposed to a society where property is not respected in a voluntary society. Now, when it really comes to politics, I view politics and government in its totality, in everything that it is, to be absolutely immoral and contrary to everything that is virtuous in the world. So regardless of whether or not you believe in the ethics of property rights or the ethics of the commune, to be perfectly honest, I really don't care that much, as long as you don't want to point guns at me. And that's the real fundamental thing is, I don't care if you want to live in a commune with other like-minded people. That's fine. Have your commune. You don't have to respect each other's property rights as long as it's not being enforced through violence and as long as it's voluntary. Likewise, if everyone wants to get together with other like-minded people and respect each other's property rights, that too is a voluntary system and a cooperative system. So how these systems will work in the absence of a centralized, political, enormous, destructive, thieving, murderous, violent hierarchy, I don't really know. We'll see what will happen. One thing to be said is, I really genuinely believe this. It's that as long as the capitalists and the communists stop pointing guns at each other, the world will be fine. The world will be fine, because none of this stuff is going to come down to the gun in the room. No one's going to be able to use force to spread what they believe the proper economic ideology will be. And now, in terms of what's existed in the past to the future, that sort of thing, I wanted to talk about communism and what I think it's unfortunate. You see, because communism has been taught by governments, just as capitalism has been taught by governments. So our concepts of these concepts are completely backwards and destroyed. So we really need to understand and examine what the history of these concepts has been, as it has been related to through government language, but also through truth and empiricism, what they really are. Now, we have governments that call themselves communists, and we have governments that call themselves capitalists, which both of these things, if you call them by their proper names, rather than state capitalism and state communism, is you have fascism and you have socialism. And state communism and state capitalism really fundamentally are oxymorons. You can't have a society based on capitalism with a minority of human beings who can violate a universal principle of property rights. You can't have capitalism with taxation. It is contrary to the idea itself. And this is why society still doesn't work fundamentally, is because we do not universalize principles which we state as being universals, but we make exceptions. And we make exceptions not out of a logical standpoint, not out of a consistency standpoint, not out of an empirical standpoint. We make these exceptions because it is what culture has taught us. And if you want, I have said this before, if you want to know anything about culture, all you need to know is the first syllable. And that will inform you as to the nature of what you are talking about. And so we have these cultural anchor points that we think society gives us, and gives us properly, rather than examining the world empirically. And so we say, well, property rights are mostly universal, except. And I don't care where the exception is. Once you have broken a principle, once you make exceptions, you get the world we have. fundamentally. You get the world we have when we have a society which tries to universalize principles but never really goes all the way with those principles. So until we truly universalize principles, we're going to continue to think that state capitalism is really capitalism rather than just statism in the form of fascism. And on the other hand, we will continue to believe in these false systems of language, which is, there's never been a communist society throughout history, just as there's never been a capitalist society throughout history, because they have both been infected with this political virus called statism, which is immoral, which the very basis of it is immoral, and it is contrary to human nature. It's no accident you get rid of the 100% tax bracket and free the slaves, and you get a wonderful flowering of wealth in society. That's what happens when you do the moral thing. So, in that society where people reject statism as force and unnecessary and downright abominable in society, then you will have communist societies arise, because we've only ever had socialist societies, because every government that has purported to be a commune has never been a commune. It's been a socialist dictatorship more often than not. So when the communists and the capitalists free themselves from the confines of violence, fundamentally is what we're talking about. When free people who believe in peace finally shake off the reins of violence that has been inflicted upon our species ever since it began, we are talking about the greatest revolution in human history, by far, because this is getting rid of all tax brackets, fundamentally. So that is what is really going to be a key to a free and peaceful society. Is the communists, the capitalists, they'll just stop pointing guns at each other. I'm going to go to Hippieville, on the weekend. It's a fantastic place to be, It's like, I've got food, and it's like, you guys have got some stuff, and let's see what happens, I'll feed you, and you do whatever happens, you smoke me up or whatever, who knows. But in any case, Hippieville's a great place to be. And just don't hurt each other, don't threaten each other, don't bribe each other, don't use governments to get what you want. Now, they're just the same, if people won't even say that. It will just be obvious in the future. It's like how no one calls themselves an abolitionist anymore. Even that, who would have thought that the abolitionist movement would succeed with such finality, so completely that it would just go away and disappear and be obvious. So, what economic model people use, I don't know what they'll choose fundamentally. We'll see. People will figure it out. But what will be abundantly clear is that everyone around you is just an anarchist. It's just the way people are. It's what it means to be a moral and generally decent human being, not believing in violence, except in the extremity of self-defense, right? Some guy jumping at you. So, when we finally achieve these societies, they will be wonderful, and we can see what happens. And the communists and the capitalists, as I have said, will stop finally pointing guns at each other, and people can figure out how best to live their lives. Have a wonderful day, guys. Thanks for listening.